So, Joe Biden says that the only way that he'll get out of the race is if the Lord Almighty comes down and tells him to leave. Well, God may be coming back to earth sooner than we all thought. Hi, how are you doing out there in internet land? My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to the weekend edition of what we do here on the internet called Front Porch Brunch. A lively little gathering of like-minded folk who want to get together, talk about the news, try to figure out what it all means, laugh our way through it, cry if necessary, but otherwise hold hands, band together and say, I got you, bro. I got you. We're going to make it. We're on Rumble. We are on YouTube. We are on Twitter. So if you haven't done it yet, please do me a favor. Send out a link. Tell people how to get here. Invite them to become a member of Fedora Nation. Tell all your friends. Tell your frenemies. Tell your enemies. Tell your mothers, your brothers, your lovers, your sisters, and your misters. Get in here. This funny-looking fellow in the hat, he actually kind of makes sense sometimes. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. I am sometimes known as the fine fella in the fedora. Sometimes I go by the beau and the chapeau. Occasionally I'm called the common man with common sense, but above all else I am called your host. As I say, we are on Rumble, we are on Twitter, and we are on that quaint little alternative social media platform known as YouTube. Spreading the good word with cheer, trying to talk about the news, figuring out what it all means, and helping us all survive it. Hope you guys have been having a great 4th of July weekend. I know I have. And oh boy, even in the brief period where I have not been on the air, so to speak, there's stuff going on. And one of the big ones was the interview last night with Joe Biden by George Stephanopoulos of ABC News. And yes, we will be getting into that, don't you know? I've got a lot of things to say about that. Clips to share and all that good stuff. WWG1 over on Rumble's like, I tried clocking in, but your time clock is broken. I guess I don't get paid today. WWG1, you are paid with gratitude, my friend. That's what I'm saying. Don't you worry about getting paid. We'll get you covered. Don't you worry about that at all. Great to have you guys here with us. Bonjour, bonjour. We're going to be talking French. We're going to be speaking French here in a little while. So that was kind of appropriate. So yes, bonjour, you porchers. So there you go. Glad to have all you guys with us. Now look, I know WWG1's over there, and I know there's probably some other people that are over there on Rumble. Y'all lurking already. So, don't be afraid. I promise I'm a nice guy. Y'all can say things in chat. It's greatly appreciated. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about this morning. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been having a great 4th of July week. Kansas? The heck are you doing in Kansas, woman? Good grief. You're supposed to be out on a boat somewhere, fixing cocktails and such like that. Unless, of course, you took the boat to Kansas, but that's a whole other issue. But good morning, my love. Glad to see you. Mwah, darling. Oh, goodness. So much to talk about. I've had a great 4th of July weekend. I hope you guys have too. WWG1 says, people do live in Kansas, right? Well, apparently they do because Leanne's niece is getting married today. Oh, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, right now, before we go any further, if you happen to see this woman on social media today, and even if you don't, please send her a happy birthday. I would offer to sing to you, Gypsy, but, maybe later in the show. Right now, my voice isn't warmed up yet. But even in my voice being warmed up, you run the risk of, the mood going dark, rivers turning to blood, dogs and cats habitating together. It's mass hysteria. But no, happy birthday, dear. We are glad to be celebrating your birthday with you today. So from all of us here on the porch, happy birthday, dear. Oh, yeah, I have had a great 4th of July weekend, and we will continue to do so this morning with Front Porch Brunch. Got a lot of news to get into. Going to do our best to squeeze it all in for you guys. And I don't know about you guys, but as y'all know, I am a lover of music, and there's one particular piece of music that I absolutely adore above all else, and that is Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. And it's always a great piece of music. I don't care what time of the year you play it, but on the 4th of July, it can be a lot of fun when you throw in the fireworks and everything else. And as you might expect, orchestras around the country have been playing various different renditions of it. Good morning, TBA over there on Rumble. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, various orchestras around the country have been playing renditions of it, this weekend as is America's birthday. And I found a particular orchestra that played a great, fantastic rendition of it. I wanted to bring it to you guys. So I tell you what, do me a favor and please enjoy and appreciate the following. Doesn't that just stir your soul? I tell you what, every time I hear Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, I just absolutely just have a blast with it. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. So anyway, I don't know if you're thanking me for the happy birthday wish or the 1812 Overture, but anyway, who knows? No, I know why you're thanking me, darling. Do not worry about it. Love you, dear. Love you, dear. Glad you're here with us. Okay. TBA says, watching the antics and going on these past few weeks, it does seem like a symphony being directed by someone. Most people would call that conspiratorial. I call that probably being ahead of the curve. Now, in that vein, since TBA sort of set me up beautifully here, we got to get into a discussion about this interview last night that Joe Biden did with George Stephanopoulos on ABC News. And I tell you what, Biden didn't do himself any favors, but we'll get into that here shortly. But to give you an idea of the gravity of the situation, I want to play you a clip from 3 days ago on CNN. Everyone's favorite communist, Van Jones, was on a panel with a host at the Communist News Network. And he pretty much summed up everything that everybody is thinking. So do me a favor, check this out. And again, I should have asked this when I was playing the 1812 Overture, but give me a sound check as always. Let me know everything's running okay. And here we go.
Look, I'm just going to be honest. I mean, everybody comes on the air and says all this great stuff, but behind the scenes, it's full-scale panic. People are passing around legal memos, PDFs are flying back and forth on WhatsApp, trying to figure out what are the options, how can you replace Biden, how do you get him to do it in a way where he feels respected as he should be respected, who should Kamala Harris's vice president be? The conversation on air and the conversation off air are completely different.
Okay, so there's a lot of pressure right now inside the Democrat Party. What are we going to do about Joe? What are we going to do with Joe? Well, it's in that vein that Joe Biden took a trip to Wisconsin yesterday for a campaign rally. And after the rally, he did the interview with Stephanopoulos. Well, we have footage of Biden's motorcade traveling along the road as it was heading for its location, and to show you how seriously the Biden campaign is taking everything. It gets kind of personal here. So, tell you what, folks. Yeah, here's you can just see the president's car coming into the background now, and got the traditional American flags, got everything else. Well, they've added some things to the car. What are these bars on the windows? What in the world is this? Wait a minute. Hang on now. There's Biden. There's Hunter. Wait a minute. Who's driving this car? Oh, never mind. Okay, we all now know what happened. Okay, Maybe that wasn't the presidential motorcade. Yeah, just saying. I don't know. Anyway, forgive me, folks. I'm in a very good mood this morning, so I'm just trying to inject some humor wherever I can. So let's start with the first clip. And this runs about 30 seconds or so. And I'll frame it up by saying this is Pelosi's question to Biden and everybody else. So, folks, do me a favor. We're going to stop at various points, have comments and commentary, and get your guys' take on everything. So, check this out. The exchange between George Stephanopoulos of ABC News and President Joe Biden.
But your friend Nancy Pelosi actually framed the question that I think is on the minds of millions of Americans. Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts. I didn't prepare. I had a bad night. Well, and I got to say something about this. I got to say something about this interview. When I first watched it, I didn't think that George Stephanopoulos was being a particularly tough interviewer. And I gotta be frank about this. I think that my years of knowing Stephanopoulos' history and everything else kind of clouded my initial judgment. When I went back and watched it a second time, when I was getting clips ready for the show, the more I listened to Stephanopoulos and watched what he was doing, the more I began to realize this man is walking around the room kind of like a swordsman looking for his opening to make the thrust for the cut. And the longer that interview went on, the tougher he got. So Biden says, I was exhausted, I was tired, I just had a bad night. And yeah, I agree with you. It sounds like Biden cannot get his breath. I absolutely agree with that. So then Stephanopoulos followed up with another question, which again, I give George Stephanopoulos credit. He did a solid job with the interview. Would I say he got an A+? No, but I'd say I gave him a good solid B. Was it the toughest interview I ever saw George Stephanopoulos give? No, not necessarily. But you know what? He asked every question that every average American is probably thinking that had not seen anything of the campaign up until the debate. And after the debate, they're all sitting there going, what the heck is going on around here? And you would understand that. I mean, guys like me, I watch politics all the time. So what I saw last Thursday night didn't necessarily surprise me. To people who aren't watching politics all the time, they're being told, yeah, president's fine. Yeah, he's, got a little, maybe not the same hitch in his step he used to have, but yeah, he's on the whole, he's fine. Then they watch that debate and go, oh my God, this guy's off his rocker. He's terrible. So Stephanopoulos follows up with the next logical question that you might expect to be asked. So here we go.
You say you were exhausted, and I know you've said that before as well, but you came, and you did have a tough month, but you came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible. Matter of fact, the docs with me, I asked if they did a COVID test because they're trying to figure out what's wrong. They did a test to see whether or not I had some infection, a virus. I didn't. They just had a really bad cold.
And did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
Oh, okay. Let me stop right there. Let me stop there for a second. I'm going to back that up. But now, hang on here just a minute. I had a cold. Now, Stephanopoulos asked the logical question that everybody is thinking. Wait a minute. You had, at a minimum, you had a week to get ready for this debate. Okay. Really, he had 10 days because you got to remember how this went. He came home from Europe, had a little mini vacation up at 2, maybe 3 days up at Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Then flew down to Camp David for a solid week. So we're talking 10 days. Now, he just indicated, there's a physician that travels with the president all the time. Okay? Somebody is constantly monitoring the president of the United States' physical condition. Okay? And understandably so. You're talking about the leader of the Western world. You're talking about the leader of the free world. Okay? You kind of expect this. So he had 10 days to get over jet lag. Which, I mean, granted, I don't care if you're young or old. To go from America to Europe to America and back to Europe again in a very short amount of time, the jet lag is going to be awful. But you had 10 days to get over it. And he had a cold. Now, there's just one problem. There's, to me, just one problem with this whole he had a cold thing. I want to take you back to July 2nd at the White House presser. Jean-Claude Pierre Van Damme, Karine, screwed that up. Karine Jean-Claude Van Damme Pierre, the White House press secretary, is asked about the president's health. Now, I want you, this runs about 25 seconds, but pay very close attention to what she says.
Karine, you just reminded us that President Biden had a cold on Thursday. What medications was he taking in the days or hours leading up to the debate?
Okay, now hold it right there. The question is, he had a cold. What medications was he taking leading up to the debate? Which, by the way, is a perfectly reasonable question from the press. Okay? It really is. He has a cold. There's a physician on standby with the president at all times, especially when he's traveling. Okay? He had a cold. What medications did you give him leading up to the debate? Here is Karine Jean-Claude Van Damme Pierre's answer.
And I know that question has come in a couple of times to us. He was not taking any cold medication.
What? Wait a minute. What did you just say? What did you just say? Let me back this up. Let's play that again.
Question has come in a couple of times to us. He was not taking any cold medication.
Huh? What? Wait a minute. The leader of the Western world, the most powerful man on the planet, supposedly, the man who is charged with holding, controlling, and having complete access to the nuclear codes of the United States arsenal, has a cold, is going into the biggest political debate of his life, regardless of whatever office he's held. He knows what is at stake in this debate. He has a cold, and you guys didn't give him any medication? And on top of that, laying aside the question of having a head cold medication, he had 10 days to get ready for this debate, to get over jet lag or a cold or whatever else. And remember what the New York Times reported. New York Times reported that his staff was carving out time in the afternoon for him to take a nap. He has a cold, but you're giving him no medication. Does any of this make sense to anybody? WWG1 says, apparently Biden was asymptomatic. No, I'm more inclined to believe that Biden was lying. But that's just me. I mean, we're only talking about, going on 40 years of experience with this cat. Oy vey. All right, now, the one clip of the night that to me is the biggest whopper that I have ever heard is the one that everybody is talking about on social media. And you know what? We are going to play it. We have to. We cannot not talk about this. Okay? Cannot talk about this. Or not talk about it, I should say. So Stephanopoulos asks him the perfectly logical question that you would expect after somebody who laid an egg as badly as Biden did. And with that, roll 'em, Smokey.
And did you ever watch the debate afterwards?
I don't think I did, no.
What? What? I don't think I did. Meaning, you can't remember if you watched it? Or you're just not sure? What does that mean? No, I don't think so. Now, he's going to roll off some stats a little bit later in this interview that lead you to believe either he watched it. Yeah, it is a weird answer. It's a yes or no question. Did you or didn't you? I mean, I'm not trying to look. Y'all know how I feel about Biden, and I'm not trying to beat him up any worse than what he's already doing to himself in this interview. Believe me, he gave himself not an ounce of help with his current problems. Okay. WWG1 says, a double negative, huh? I like to use triple or quadruple negatives just to confuse people. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a very weird answer. Either yes or no. Yes, I saw it. No, I did not choose to watch it. I was just that pissed off about how I mean, if he didn't watch it, I'd understand that. I mean, I would. If I went out there and laid an egg as bad as he did that night, I wouldn't want to watch it either. Be like, all right, this trash is behind me. Let's get better. Okay? Let the staff watch it. I don't care. I'm the candidate. I'm moving on. I would understand that. But to sit there and say, I don't think so. What? TBA says he doesn't recall as it was as if it had never happened. Maybe in his mind it didn't. I don't know. But yeah, I just found it to be weird. And I think weird is the appropriate word here. Okay. Now, this next one's going to run for a little bit, and we're going to stop at various points. Because in this roughly almost 2-minute clip, okay, there are a bunch of things that are said that just don't add up, don't make sense, can easily be refuted, ought to be talked about, etc., and so on. So let's just get right to it. And I'll start it up right here.
Well, what I want to get at is what were your experiences as you were going through the debate? Did you know how badly it was going?
Yeah, look, the whole way I prepared.
Oh, hang on. Okay.
Nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council for explicit detail.
Okay, well, now, honestly, that part of the answer makes sense. The way I prepared for it, you know, I did it just like if I were meeting with generals or national security staff. You know, I want detailed answers, yada, yada, yada. Now, that I understand that. And actually, to be perfectly fair to Biden, that kind of makes sense because that's actually how Trump prepares. I mean, if you stop and think about it, Trump goes out to rallies. He does interviews with reporters. He's talking to the press all the time. You may not agree with his answers. You may not like his answers, but Trump is constantly in the fire or being fired upon, depending on how you look at it. So this part of Biden's answer, I don't necessarily have a problem with. It's where he goes from here that starts getting weird. And with that, we'll pick it up.
And I realized about partway through that, you know, although I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate, 9 now or whatever the hell it is. The fact of the matter is that what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. I mean, the way the debate ran, not my fault, nobody else's fault. No one else's fault.
But it seemed like you were.
Okay, now wait a minute. Hang on a minute. First question. How would this man know that Trump had lied 28 times during the debate? Did someone tell him after the fact? Did he watch it? I mean, that's a very specific number. How do you know that Trump lied 28 times? And the way he's answering this makes no sense. Well, the way I prepared for the debate, the New York Times poll said I was down by 9 or whatever the hell it was, after the debate, and what he lied. Well, what does that have to do with how you performed? How does that have to do with what you performed? I don't know. Good morning, young lady. Oh, and good morning, good lady up there in New England. We love you, darling. Mwah. All right, let's get back to this screwy answer. Anyway, back to it. And come on, darling.
We're having trouble from the first question in, even before he spoke.
Well, I just had a bad night. You've had some bad interviews once in a while. I can't remember any, but I'm sure you do.
I've had plenty. I guess the question, the problem is here for a lot of Americans watching is you've said, going back to 2020, watch me, to people who are concerned about your age. And, 50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Now, I have got to give Stephanopoulos credit here. I really do. And I love the way that he phrased this. I'm asking what a lot of Americans are thinking. Okay? They saw your debate performance and it confirmed what they're thinking. Honestly, I've got not a complaint really. I've got not many complaints with the way Stephanopoulos handled this interview. I really don't. This is interesting. Before we get back to the clip, per Julie Kelly, Judge Cannon just granted Trump's motion to pause some deadlines in Florida case to consider SCOTUS's immunity opinion and potential impact upon the case. Trump just filed this yesterday. Oh, baby. I have not seen this yet, but good news. That is some good news. Hearing probably will be postponed until after the election, unfortunately. Okay. All right. Well, all right. You take the good with the bad. Anyway, I mean, Stephanopoulos here is asking a reasonable question. And it's a question that frankly most Americans are thinking after they watch that debate. I mean, like I said, there are millions of Americans who do not follow politics. And you know what? Bless their heart. I think they're better off than I am. It's my thing. I've always followed it, always loved it. I love the machinations. I love everything else that goes along with it. But there are millions of people who just tuned into that debate the other night because they knew it was going to be Trump versus Biden, the rematch, kind of like the Apollo Creed versus Rocky Balboa thing. And they watched Biden and went, oh my God, this man's terrible. So Stephanopoulos is asking a very reasonable question. You said ever since 2020, watch me. Well, they watched you and they're like, so let's hear how Biden finishes answering this question. This should be fairly interesting.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including till 2 o'clock in the morning after.
What? I did 10 major events till 2 o'clock in the morning? I don't remember any of that. The heck is he talking about? 10 major events till 2 o'clock in the morning? I'm going to fact check that one.
After that debate, I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response, no slipping. And
no. Notice what he just said there. No slipping. Biden just acknowledged He just admitted what everybody watched, and he even named it. He called it slipping. He called it slipping. That's his word for it. But he just acknowledged what everybody saw. That moment it kind of goes right by. And if you're not paying attention, yeah, exactly. No slipping. That's what he's calling it. But in naming it, he is admitting that what people saw actually happened. And he's calling it something. I slipped. I verbally slipped up. Okay, let's finish this clip, and then we'll move on.
And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
I don't know why I had a bad night. You blamed it on a cold, and then you blamed it on not listening to your doctors, and then you blamed it on Trump. Then you've blamed it on everything else except acknowledging that you might have a problem. WWG1 says, I call it single clutching a double clutch transmission. That's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. All right. Stephanopoulos pounced after that little 2-minute exchange. He pounced. And what he brought up next is really good. Again, this runs about a couple of minutes, but it's worth everything. We'll stop it where we need to. But I want to analyze some of this with you guys and just get you guys' take on it. And again, put your comments in chat. Yeah, jet lag and working too late. I'm shocked he actually conducted a decent interview. Then again, if he hadn't, he would have been roasted for doing fluff. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Stephanopoulos was kind of up against the wall here. It's like, man, I can't give this guy softballs. I got to actually do something here. I got to do some journalistic work. Leanne says he flew to North Carolina after the debate and got there at 2. Not sure about Georgia. Yeah. I mean, this whole, I did 10 events, some of them till 2 in the morning. Yeah, I agree with you. And this is true too. This is very true. Very, very true. TBA over on Rumble says Biden cannot admit that his brain is malfunctioning. That would be the end of everything. So he and his handlers must continue lying to the American people. WWG1 says, I only had 14 hours of sleep last night and I'm exhausted. Ask my cat. She gets 16 hours. That's great. That's great. Yeah. And see, this is part of why I thought Stephanopoulos might give Biden a bunch of softball questions. I thought this might be a, ignore the fact that the emperor is naked. He's actually wearing a great suit of clothes kind of interview. You're not allowed to believe what you see with your eyes. No. You got to believe what we tell you. Watch this interview with Biden. He's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with him. All right. Let's get this thing pulled up. So after that previous exchange we just watched, Stephanopoulos pounced. Okay. And again, we'll stop this where needed, but check out where he goes here.
Did it come to you that you were having that bad night?
Well, it came to me as having a bad night when I realized that even when I was answering a question, even though they turned his mic off, he was still shouting.
What? I knew I was having a bad night that even when they turned his mic off, he's still talking about Trump. Folks, you were here with me. And if you weren't, I assure you, I watched that debate. And I am not saying this because, I'm supporting Trump. I'm just trying to be perfectly honest here. Did Trump, make comments after his mic was cut off? Yes, maybe once, maybe twice I can think of. But he wasn't yelling. He was speaking in a normal tone of voice, and you could hear it even though the microphone was cut off. There was no yelling at Biden. Nobody yelled at Biden during that debate. And again, if you don't believe me, go back and watch it for yourself. But I'm telling you, what he just said there is a whopper. Yes, exactly. There was no shouting. There was no shouting at all. Like I said, Trump may have addressed, a couple of things after the mic got cut off, but he didn't have to yell. at all. And as a matter of fact, not only did he not have to yell, he didn't. All right. TBA says Biden is hallucinating everything that he told George. It's all scrambled eggs up there. Yeah, it could be. WWG1 says they cut off Trump's mic when he was making a good point. They cut off Biden when he was screwing up. Exactly my point. Yeah, well, maybe they were yelling in his earpiece. Who knows? All right, let's get back to this thing. This is getting juicy.
And I let it distract me. I'm not blaming it on that. But I realized that I just wasn't in control.
How are you not in control? I mean, how are you not in control? CNN set up this debate to give Joe Biden every conceivable advantage imaginable. No audience, cutting off the microphones. The moderators have the right to enforce the time any way they see fit. We're getting 2 commercial breaks. Everything they did was to keep Biden in control. And even then, he couldn't perform. And now we're trying to blame it on, well, he was yelling at me. But I'm not blaming that. Well, then, Joe, what are you blaming your bad performance on? If it's not Trump, and if it's not this or it's not that, then what is it? Well, I was sick. I just had a bad night. No. That's not going to cut it. That is not going to cut it. You might be able to use that excuse for a baseball team or a basketball team or a football team or some kind of sports team, but not for the President of the United States. You cannot have a bad day. And is that a harsh standard to live up to? Yes, it is. But that's the job you signed up for, my friend. And that's the job you're trying to sign up for again. There are clips changing the pages of his notes. Not supposed to have. Well, okay. I didn't see those the night of the debate, but I WWG1 says, the fact that the deck was stacked for Biden and then he still does badly is a good thing. More stark difference between the two. Exactly. All right, back to this. Let's see what else this nitwit's saying. In 3, 2, 1.
But part of the other concern is that this seems to have fit into a pattern of decline that has been reported on recently. New York Times.
Now Stephanopoulos just struck a nerve right there, because look at the way he grinned. If you don't know anything about Joe Biden, let me tell you a story about Joe. If you've ever watched Joe Biden in a debate, if somebody makes a really good and valid point, Joe gives it one of these. Can you believe this? That kind of look. The look like, can you get a load of this guy? Can you believe this malarkey? I can't. Listen to this guy over. He's got that grin on his face that says you shouldn't believe what you just heard. That's what he did right here. That grin, when Stephanopoulos says a series of decline, means that Stephanopoulos just hit a nerve with Joe Biden. Anyway, back to this. In 3, 2.
Times had a headline on July 2nd, Biden's lapses are said to be increasingly common and worrisome. Here's what they wrote. People who have spent time with President Biden over the last few months or so said the lapses appear to have grown more frequent, more pronounced, and after Thursday's debate, more worrisome. By many accounts, as evidenced by video footage, observation, and interviews, Mr. Biden is not the same today as he was even when he took office 3.5 years ago. Similar reporting in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. Are you the same man today that you were when you took office 3.5 years ago?
In terms of successes, yes.
No, notice how he just answered that. In terms of successes, no one asked you about your legislative accomplishments, sir. They asked you, are you the same man? See, Biden's trying to shift the standard here. When you and I are asked the question, are you the same person that you were 3.5 years ago? We consider our physical ability, our mental ability, depending on the context of the question, maybe our financial situations. We understand how that question ought to be answered. And Biden does too, by the way. He just doesn't want to answer it. Okay? That's why he's trying to shift the standard. He's trying to make the standard for determining are you the same man that you were 3.5 years ago to, well, look at the things I'm getting done. No. You can still get things done and still have a change in how you are physically, mentally, financially, emotionally, etc. Okay? So, yeah. He's being very slick with how he's trying to answer this. Look at in terms of accomplishments. Yeah, I'm the same man I was. Yeah. Hang on one second. We're going to pause one quick second. Gypsy just brought up something, and it's a clip from the debate showing how Biden was shifting around his notes. And yeah, we'll play it. Absolutely. So give me 1 second here to get this from the debate. Oh, whoa. What was that? Showing how Biden. Wait a minute. You're not supposed to be doing that. Just a moment. Sorry. Where are you here? Ah, there you are. All right. Yeah, here we go. Okay, there we got it pulled up. Okay, yeah. This is the debate. Watch what Biden does here.
Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5.
Oh, big dog, you ain't slick.
Israel's
You ain't slick.
and created pre-written notes, props, or contact with campaign staff.
All right, he's flipping over some notes. There may be something to it. Yeah. Okay. Back to this clip with Biden. Remember what he's trying to do here. Are you the same man? Can be two different ways, literally or figuratively. In other words, are you the same human? Okay, WWG1. I see where you're going with that. Clever. Yeah. Look at what I'm accomplishing. The stuff I'm getting done. I have to be the same man. No, you can still be getting things done and not be the same. Anyway, back to the clip. Here we go.
I also was the guy who put together a peace plan for the Middle East that may be coming to fruition. I was also the guy that expanded NATO. I was also the guy that grew the economy. All the individual things that were done were ideas I had or I fulfilled. I moved on. And so, for example, well, that was true then. What's Biden done lately? Today announced 200,000 new jobs. We're moving in a direction that no one's ever taken on. I know you know this from the days in the government. I took on Big Pharma. I beat them. No one said I could beat them. I took on all the things we said we got done. We were told we couldn't get done. And part of it is what I said when I ran was I wanted to do 3 things. Restore some decency to the office. Restore some support for the middle class instead of trickle-down economics, built from the middle out and the bottom up, the way the wealthy still do fine, everyone does better, and unite the country.
But see, look what he's doing. It's just rolling off a list of things that he's doing. He's trying to make it look like, hey, I'm able to get all these things done, which, first of all, it's not really much of a list of accomplishments because most of it's a load of crap anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's just, this answer is just a joke. It's an absolute joke. Well, again, Stephanopoulos is having none of this. Now, the next session we're going to get into is what I call the health questions. Okay? And Stephanopoulos comes in for what I consider to be the coup de grace. One of the coup de grace of this interview, because he does something at the end of this clip that absolutely, I'll put it to you this way. This is my opinion. Y'all feel free to chime in. If normies out there who aren't watching politics all the time are sitting there wondering, hey, man, maybe there is something wrong with Biden. I wonder if well, maybe not. Well, maybe there is. Well, you know what he really ought to do is take some kind of a cognitive test to rule it out. Now, just hold that thought when we get to the end of this clip. Okay? So here Stephanopoulos goes into questions about health. Now look at the expression on his face, because this isn't going well for Biden, okay? Here we go.
I understand that, and I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking you is about your personal situation. Do you dispute that there have been more lapses, especially in the last several months?
Can I run the 110 flat? No.
We didn't ask you about your physical health, Mr. Biden. We asked you about your mental state, the lapses, what's going on. Reports are coming in that there's more and more of them. Is that the truth?
But I'm still in good shape.
Are you more frail?
No.
I know you spoke.
Keep my schedule.
I know you spoke with your doctor after the debate. What did he say?
He said, he just looked at me and said, "You're exhausted."
But again, that explanation makes no sense. He had a week off from his travels and from his major duties in the White House to get ready for this debate. The New York Times is reporting that they were laying out time for him to take a nap when needed in the afternoons. He couldn't have been that exhausted. 10 days off from really doing any major, administrative duties of the White House as president. 7 days of that 10 days was debate prep. And you're telling me that after all that, he's still exhausted? Like I said, I can understand the jet lag argument. Maybe. If he had just come back from the second trip to Europe and then 2 days later, he goes into a debate with Donald Trump. But he had 10 days. This whole I was exhausted, I was in bad shape, I had a cold, it makes no sense in light of the facts. Anyway, back to this clip.
I said, I have medical doctors travel me everywhere, every president does, as you know. Medical doctors, some of the best in the world, travel me everywhere I go. I have an ongoing assessment of what I'm doing. And they don't hesitate to tell me if they think there's something wrong.
Okay, now remember that what he just said. They don't hesitate to tell me if something's wrong. I have doctors traveling with me all the time, but he got no cold medication prior to this debate.
I know you said you have an ongoing assessment. Have you had a full neurological and cognitive evaluation?
Now, that is a reasonable question. I'm sorry that I'm chopping this up the way that I am, but it just deserves commentary. Stephanopoulos is asking what everybody is thinking. Have you had a full neurological exam? Have you been checked? Here's Biden's answer.
I get a full neurological test every day.
That's not what he asked you, Mr. President. He didn't ask you, are you getting one every day? He said, have you had one? And again, notice what Biden's doing here. He's trying to shift what the answer means, or maybe better to say, the standard by which the question can be answered. When you hear the question, have you had a full neurological exam? You're thinking, CAT scans, MRIs, PET scan, whatever. I mean, again, I'm not a medical person myself, but generally you think these things immediately come to your mind. Biden's trying to make the statement or make the argument, hey, I've had a neurological exam every day. Look at all the stuff I'm dealing with. Let's go on with his answer because this gets interesting. Watch what he's doing here.
With me. And I've had a full physical. I had, I've been able to read for my physicals. Yes. The answer.
I know your doctor said he consulted with a neurologist. I guess I'm asking a slightly different question. Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
Here it comes. Watch this.
No one said I had to.
What? No one said he had to. Wait a minute. 3.5 years of the kind of things that everybody is watching right now. We've been seeing it. You've been seeing it. I've been seeing it. Folks on the ideological right of the spectrum have been seeing it. Even open-minded moderates that are willing to admit it. Even liberals are willing to admit it in some cases prior to Thursday. Now, there's a significant portion of the American press that knew about it and would never admit to it. There were Democrats who knew about it and they would never admit it. They wanted to keep it hidden from the American people. Ain't no putting that genie back in the bottle now after last Thursday. And the consequences of that debate are going to roll all the way through November. TBA says, thus why our country is being destroyed purposely. No one told him he had to have a battery and neurological tests. This is the leader of the free world, the president of the United States of America. You mean a doctor is going to look at an 81-year-old man, who's obviously having some issues. There's no getting her and saying, well, we don't need to do any tests on him. He's perfectly fine. Are you nuts? Anyway, back to this. This is just gold here. I'm telling you what.
No one said, they said I'm good.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results?
There is one of the coup de grace. Watch this answer.
To the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. You know, not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England. I'm working on what we're doing with regard to in Europe, with regard to expansion of NATO and whether it's going to stick. I'm taking on Putin. I mean, every day, there's no day I go through, they're not those decisions I have to make every single day.
But it's not the same thing. No, again, and I hate to beat this drum, and I hate to, beat a dead horse. I apologize, but it's not the same thing. The ability to function physically and do activities is not a true, accurate standard test of your ability to do them. Come on, Joe. You know exactly what he's asking you, and this is nothing more than a lawyer's dodge. WWG1 says, this was pre-recorded and edited. What was left on the cutting room floor? That's a great question. That's a fabulous question. If his doctors tell him he's good, what sort of doctors are they? Jill's doctor friends. Yeah, really. That's a great point. As Megan Kelly said, if he'd done a cognitive test, that they would have been posting the glowing results everywhere. That means either he didn't do it or he did and he tanked it. Great point. That is an absolutely great point. Joe knows exactly what question he's being asked here. Would you be willing to take a series of cognitive tests and neurological tests and release the results to the American people? I take that test every day. No, you don't, Joe. You engage in activities every day. You do things every day physically, but the ability to do those things is not the same thing as a measurement of your ability of how you do them. Hence the word test. Oh my, I tell you what, he and his staff, they lawyered up. They lawyered up for this thing. No, they didn't go hire a bunch of lawyers. They figured out how to give a lawyer's dodge, to give an answer that answers the question without answering. Yeah, that sounds like a politician. In other news, water is wet. All right, I agree with you. But my point is, Stephanopoulos, regardless of what you think of him, is hitting him head on with this thing. He really is. He's doing a good job in this interview. And Joe's dodging the question. And this is not settling anybody's mind, especially in the Democrat Party. But we'll get to more of that here momentarily. All right. The election. To borrow a line from that old song, should I stay or should I go now? Well, we get into that. So before we do, let me read this one comment. You are not going to get either Biden or his puppet master to admit that they are still trying to pull the wool over our eyes. You're right. I'll never get them to admit it. But I am more than willing to fight for the American people, or at least the people watching this live stream, beyond my regular audience and show them this is hooey. And again, I will freely admit, I am not the sharpest knife in the case. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. But if I can sit here, analyze these clips, and demonstrate how tissue paper thin they are as far as answering the questions that surround Joe Biden, if I can do that, then every average, everyday American out there can do it. And people far better than I am can do it. Far better commentators than I am can do it. And I'm not trying to put myself down there. I'm just trying to be perfectly honest about it. So no, I don't expect them to admit it. But that doesn't mean I'm going to sit there and take it. All right. To the question of the election, should he stay or should he go? This set of answers gets real interesting. It makes me start to wonder about his perception of reality. Check this out.
All that is true, but 2020 was a close race. And your approval rating has dropped significantly since then. I think the last poll I saw was about 36%. The number of Americans who think you're too old to serve has doubled since 2020.
And again, he just hit a nerve. Look at Joe, look away, look down, and kind of has that I'm really pissed off at you look on his face.
2020. Wouldn't a clear-eyed political calculus tell you that it's going to be much tougher to win in 2024?
Not when you're running against a pathological liar. Not when he hadn't been challenged in a way that he's about to be challenged.
I'm sure George Herbert Walker Bush said the very same thing when he ran against Bill Clinton, so Stephanopoulos would probably understand that one, but I digress.
Not when people...
You've had months to challenge him.
Oh, sure I had months, but I was also doing a hell of a lot of other things, like wars around the world.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that, but just the way he said, I was doing a lot of other things around the world, like wars, or starting them. Anyway.
Like keeping NATO together, like working, anyway. But look.
Do you really believe you're not behind right now?
Now listen to the answer he just gives. Do you really believe you're not behind right now? Listen to this.
I think it's all the pollsters I talk to tell me it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. And when I'm behind, there's only one poll I'm really far behind, CBS poll and NBC, and
New York Times and NBC both have you about 6 points behind in the popular vote.
That's exactly right. New York Times had me behind before anything happened to do with this race. Had me behind 10 points. 10 points had me behind. Nothing's changed substantially since the debate.
Nothing's changed substantially since the debate. Oh, wow. This guy, I tell you. Anyway.
New York Times poll.
Just when you look at the reality, though, Mr. President, I mean, you won the popular vote in 2020, but it was still deadly close in the electoral college.
7 million votes.
Yes, but you're behind now in the popular vote.
I don't buy that.
I don't buy it? Now, does that mean you don't agree with it? Or you don't understand how you could be? Or it's just not true? Which of those three is it? Anyway, back to the rest of this and then we'll comment.
Is it worth the risk?
I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
Okay. He swears up and down. This race is a toss-up. All the pollsters that I talk to say it is. Yada, yada, yada. Well, he doesn't talk to too many pollsters. I know that much. All right, couple more clips. Now, I said there's a couple of coup de grace moments in this interview. First one is when Stephanopoulos says, would you be willing to voluntarily take a battery of neurological and cognitive tests and do it independently and release those results to the American people? Okay. Joe says, I'm tested all the time. Okay. Now here comes the second coup de grace moment. And this one, again, I give Stephanopoulos credit. I really do. You know, people might get mad at me for saying it, but I give him credit on this. Check this out, because this is a great, great question from George.
You know, the heart of your case against Donald Trump is that he's only out for himself, putting his personal interest ahead of the national interest. How do you respond to critics who say that by staying in the race, you're doing the same thing.
Oh, that's just devastating. But Front Porch, I don't get it. Why is it such a great question? Because think about what George Stephanopoulos just did. He just made Trump and Biden, in Biden's mind, a moral equivalency. The heart of your case against Donald Trump is that he's selfish and he's only out for himself. Couldn't your critics make the same argument by you choosing to stay in this race? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I don't know what Stephanopoulos' motives were when he went into this debate or when he was asking the questions or what he was really thinking, okay? And I'm not going to try and plumb the depths of his mind. That's not my job, okay? But that question is perfectly fair, perfectly legitimate. I mean, the heart of your case against Trump is he's selfish, he's out for himself. How come people can't look at you and say the exact same thing by the fact you refuse to get out of this race? That is a great question. Here's Biden's answer, and I'll tell you what. Again, watch what he's getting ready to do. I know that face looks a little weird, but he's getting ready to deflect. Now, if y'all have ever watched Joe Biden, you know how he does this. Watch what he's getting ready to do.
Oh, come on.
That is classic. That right there is classic Joe Biden. Look, for those of you watching this live stream and you don't have a lot of familiarity with watching Joe Biden like I have over the years, that move he did right there, oh, come on. That is classic Joe Biden. Go back and watch his debates. Go back and watch his public speeches. Watch the press conferences, not even when he was president, okay? Back when he was a senator, when he was the vice president, whatever. That right there is a classic Joe Biden move. A perfect example, WWG was, oh, come on, man, you're a dog-faced pony soldier. That sort of thing. Oh, come on, man, that's silly. That's just that. That's how Joe Biden deflects. That's how he does it. If he's a poker player, that's his tell. That's the tell. If he's a card player, there he just gave away what he's holding in his hand by the way he reacts to what got laid down on the flop. If I may use some card terminology. Oh, come on. Stephanopoulos hit him. He hit him right between the eyes. Here's the rest of the answer. In 3, 2.
Well, I don't think those critics know what they're talking about.
They're just wrong.
It's wrong. Look, Trump is a pathological liar. Trump is, he is. Have you ever seen anything Trump did that benefited somebody else, not him?
You know, I really can't believe he was silly enough. I can't believe he was silly enough to make that last statement at the end. Have you ever seen Donald Trump do something that benefited somebody else other than him? Buddy, there are thousands of people across this country and around this world who have voluntarily on their own stepped up and talked about the generosity of Donald Trump. Look, I'm not here to try and, toot Donald Trump's horn. Okay, he can do that well enough on his own, and believe me, he's very good at tooting his own horn. But my point is, that was a mistake. Not a big one in the grand scheme of things, but it was a mistake. You just opened the door to people coming forward saying, Donald Trump did this for me out of the kindness of his own heart. Donald Trump paid for my cancer treatment. Donald Trump heard I was going through a bad time and wrote me a check for $10,000, and I never asked him a thing. Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump, volunteered to get the skating rink at Rockefeller Center done for the city of New York, so that our kids can have someplace to go at Christmas and holidays. Donald Trump did fill in the blank. That was a mistake. One last clip. And for me, I titled this one, "This is where Joe gets religion." So, because this is great. This is absolutely great. So let me set this one up. I am not going to do anything other than just tee it up the way I did. Here you go. This runs about 13 seconds.
If you can be convinced that you can.
Rowing is boring and hard, but it's a full-body workout that engages 86% of muscles.
Well, I don't think those critics know what they're talking about.
All right, hang on, guys.
They're just wrong.
Hang on.
It's wrong.
This thing just, when you come to the electronic front porch, you always know you're going to get some kind of technical, boomer moment. There was my boomer moment for the morning. Anyway, here's the clip.
If you can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump, will you stand down?
It depends if the Lord Almighty comes out and tells me that, I might do that.
Well,
it depends if the Lord Almighty comes down and tells me if I'm to do that. So translation, God's the only person that can get Joe Biden out of this race. I'm sure that's something the Democrats are just loving the idea of. That we've got to get the Lord off his throne in heaven to come down and tell Joe to quit. Yeah, he won't. And that's, the New York police officer is the one I'm thinking of, but no doubt there are others across this country. Yeah. WWG1 says over on Rumble, the fact that he brings up this stuff about Trump lying makes the normies want to do their own research. Another comment from WWG1, the Lord Almighty needs to put his popcorn down first. Oh, Lord. So God's got to come down from heaven, and God's the only one that can convince Joe Biden to get out of this race. Oh, Lord. This is just... Now, there was one more clip I could have played, and I chose not to do it. But Stephanopoulos asks him, again, another perfectly logical question. He says, so if Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries came to you and said, look, we're really worried about Democrats getting thumped pretty good here if you stay in this race. Biden's like, they're not going to do that. I've talked to them. Now, to me, Stephanopoulos should have followed up with, when did you talk to him? What did you say? He didn't, but okay, fine. I can overlook that. But yeah, Biden's out there trying to convince her, I've talked to everybody. I've talked to Jim Clyburn. I've talked to Nancy. I've talked to Chuck. I've talked to Hakeem. Yeah, they're all telling me to stay in the race. I really want some reporters to ask them that question. Senator Schumer, I have a quote here from President Biden where he says, you told him to stay in the race. Did you do that? Or ask that same question of Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi or whoever. I want them on the record for this. I want it asked. I really do. I'd love for some congressional reporters to get in their grill and very politely ask them that question. I want to see the answer. All right. So how did this interview be received by Democrats and liberals and progressives all across the country and around the world? Not very well. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks. Biden will go down as the most selfish and power-obsessed president in American history. And yes, I know the bar is very high. Completely delusional and irresponsible. That interview did not help. Ooh, that's pretty tough stuff. And then we've got the morning after reaction from Axios. And I want to read this, or parts of it anyway, because this is pretty good. Because Axios is one of those places that you go if you want to know what the left is thinking. It's a fact, it's a really good online rag. Behind the Curtain, Biden's Credibility Crisis by Jim Vandehei and Mike Allen. President Biden has lost more than broad Democrat support since his bad debate. He has bled credibility with the media, with lawmakers, top officials, even his own paid staff. It's not clear if and how Biden recovers it, top Democrats tell us. Some Democrats told us Biden made matters worse Friday with his ABC interview where he denied bad poll numbers and widespread Democrat panic. All the pollsters I talked to tell me it's a toss-up, Biden told George Stephanopoulos. Asked about the Democrat congressional leaders, Biden said, they all said I should stay in the race. No one said none of the people I have said should leave. Axios' Alex Thompson, the most deeply sourced reporter on the Biden beat, has chronicled day after day the number of longtime staff and top Democrat officials who feel angry and misled. These are the president's fans, many on his payroll. Lawmakers and top Democrats feel duped by Biden, his press office, his campaign co-chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg, his top aides. They all promised the president would be sharper than this. Okay, now this I'm calling BS on this right here. I'm calling BS. No, these people are mad and upset and depressed, not because Biden misled them. No, they're mad, depressed, and upset because the American people now saw it for themselves. They saw what we have seen and have been talking about for years. And every time we'd say something and talk about it, we'd be told by folks like them, oh, you're just conspiracy theorists. You don't like Biden. You want to see him out of the White House. It's not true. You're spreading rumors. Look at him. He's perfectly fine. No. Moderates and conservatives across this country and around the world have been saying this for years. If you want to take, look, you Democrats out there that are saying that Joe Biden, that you feel like you've been betrayed and misled and all that. Hey, why didn't you go listen to world leaders at the G7 who were trying to tell you, hey, there's something seriously wrong with this man? They have no dog in this hunt, other than they'd like to know that the ally that they're working with, the leader of the West, is actually able to lead. You don't want to listen to us? You didn't want to listen to us? You've had 3.5 years or more to understand and know that Joe Biden has a serious cognitive problem. But instead of listening to us or trusting the word of your fellow Americans who were trying in good faith to show you you've got a problem, you dismiss their concerns, you put down what they said, you mocked them, you ridiculed them, you said they were hicks and know-nothings and everything else. And now, when Mr. and Mrs. America, who don't pay attention to politics, have now seen it with their own eyes, you're trying to make it like, I can't believe they misled us. I can't believe they betrayed us like this. I can't believe that we were so misled. Harumph, 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 harumph. Phooey on your harumphs. To hell with your harumphing. We told you this. And I don't take any joy in saying that. Like I said, I disagree with Joe Biden profoundly on questions of politics and policy, but he's still a human being. I don't want to see this happen to the guy. I don't want to see it happen to anybody. But he's different than any other person in that he is the president of the United States. Real quick before we get back to this article. All this talk about Joe Biden getting out of the race, okay? If this were 2020 and he were going through what he's going through right now, he could drop out, and while it would be bad for him personally, the country would be okay. We'd be fine, okay? But if he had chosen to stay in, okay, which he did, and yes, he went on to win the presidency, a debatable subject at best, but he did win the presidency. That's one thing. Now he's asking us, having seen him gotten worse than what we knew he was in 2020, he's asking us, the American people, to put him back in and keep on doing the job that he's been doing for the past 4 years. Now it's no longer an issue of his personal politics. It's a matter of national security. It's a matter of the good of the country. Which, by the way, if he does get out of this race, if he gets out, and I'm still not convinced he's gonna, if he does get out of this thing, then we need to invoke the 25th Amendment. Not that I want to see it happen, but it's the next logical step. Because if he cannot run for the office for which he's seeking re-election because of mental incapacity, then most assuredly because of mental incapacity, he should not be running the country. And this is not a Democrat thing. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a conservative thing. It's not a liberal thing. It's a common sense thing. If he's going to step down from running for re-election because he's not physically or mentally able up to do it, then he needs to go. WWG1 says it's not about the man, Brian. It's about the office. My point exactly. I would say the same thing if it were Trump. And again, Robert Hur's point, if he can't face trial, he can't run the country. If you can't put him on trial for violation of holding on to documents he never should have had a hold of, because you think that the jury would look at him and say, well, he's an old man who has memory problems. And if he can't stand trial, then he can't run the country. If he can't run for re-election, then he cannot be president. But if I had to guess, the whole reason he's hanging on comes down to two people, Jill and Hunter. Jill won't give up the money and the power and the prestige and the glory, and Hunter's too scared that Daddy won't pardon him, or made to the point won't be able to pardon him. So yeah. Another good example. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a mess. It is a genuine mess right now. And by the by, yeah, there are a whole lot of, yeah, for an amendment that's never really in seriousness, well, I shouldn't say not. I won't say it's never been invoked, at least not off the top of my head. But if it has, it's been for like temporary little, presidents having surgery, yada, yada, yada. It's got a lot of leeway. That's putting it generously. Which, by the way, one last thing on all this. For all you Democrats out there that are thinking, yeah, let's get Kamala. Let's get Kamala in there. One last point for you to consider. The Harvard X poll just dropped the other day, and it asked the question, how would Kamala do against Trump? Well, before all you Harris supporters out there just get all happy with yourselves, take a good look. She'd be down by more points than Joe Biden would be. So, you Democrats out there, be careful what you wish for. That's all I'm saying. All right. I think we've beaten that horse to death. Let's move on to something else. But before we do, real quick commercial. My name is Brian Tripp, and I'm the Front Porch Conservative. If you just happen to be stopping by this live stream, welcome to Front Porch Brunch, a fun little get-together that we have, and talking about the news and figuring out what's going on and trying to figure out things like the 25th Amendment and all kinds of other stuff. We're on Rumble. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. So I saw where TBA is like, remember to hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button. Yes, hit that thumbs up button. Hit that thumbs up button. Absolutely hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not a subscriber on YouTube or Rumble, please do me a favor and give me a sub. I would love to have your support for this going little concern of a channel that we're trying to make a going big concern of a channel. And lately we've been picking up subscribers on Rumble and picked up a few on YouTube. We're this one subscriber away from 900 on YouTube. And I know I've been saying that for a while, but it's just like I've been stuck on YouTube. It's like, but yeah, literally one subscriber away from 900 on YouTube. Yes. That's what I said. So if you got friends out there, it's like, man, I really wish I knew what was going on with politics. Is there anybody out there I ought to be listening to? That's when you go, oh, let me introduce you to somebody. So yeah, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, pass it around, tell everybody. Let's have some fun doing it. All right. Let's move on to another topic. British parliamentary elections. Let me tell you something. Tell you guys something. I want to thank a couple of different organizations right now for their coverage Thursday night of the British elections that took place on the 4th of July. First of all, I want to thank the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, Carl Benjamin's fantastic organization. If you're not subscribed to them on YouTube or on Rumble, you're missing out, because if you really want to catch up with what's going on in Great Britain culturally, politically, etc., Carl Benjamin and his boys are absolutely fantastic. And from across, and I don't know if they'll ever see this, but from across the pond, from a Yank to a Brit, you guys were fantastic. They started at about, oh my gosh, I want to say they started probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on July the 4th here in America, and went all the way till around probably 1 or 2 in the morning Eastern Standard. I mean, I had to give up because I was just wore out. But their coverage of the British parliamentary elections was just amazing. They made it fun. They had a good time. They didn't drink much Guinness that I saw, but there were adult beverages being passed around. I know that for sure. And their insights, their commentary, what they brought to it was absolutely fantastic. So if you are not following them on YouTube or on Rumble, check out Podcast of the Lotus Eaters. Go find Carl Benjamin on social media. That should probably lead you right to him. They were great. The other organization I want to thank, even though, again, they don't know me from Adam, which is perfectly fine, I've got to thank Sky News, because they put up a tracker that helped explain to me how things were going. And TBA says, yeah, those boys broadcasted all night. Oh, gosh. They must have been wiped out the next morning. But they were the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, was fantastic. I had not seen this. Really? The Despicable Vetting Org, supposed to be vet reform candidates. Ooh, okay. I had not seen this. I'll check that out. Interesting. I got to thank Sky News. For somebody like me that wants to try to better understand how the British election system works, they put a tracker on their website that was just tremendous. Now, I had said that one of the things that I would be looking for personally out of the British elections, I wanted to see how the Reform UK Party, which is the organization that Nigel Farage heads up, did against the Conservatives. And the Conservatives, as predicted, got walloped. Well, Reform did not do as well as I had hoped. As a matter of fact, I'll just tell you up front right now. They only got 5 seats out of 650. Now, if you hear that number, you're sitting there going, oh my God, these guys sucked. They were terrible. Wait a minute. Hold on. We need to put some things in perspective here. Number one, 6 weeks ago, Reform UK existed on paper. Okay. Reform UK as a political party existed in theory. In 6 weeks, those guys managed to organize candidates around Great Britain, put some money together. Nigel was out there doing speeches wherever he possibly could. And in 6 weeks, they raised the consciousness of the British people to realize, hey, there is an alternative to the Conservatives. Let's check out these Reform UK guys. And it's with that in mind that I want to put Sky News' tracker up here and talk about a few things. Okay. The final seat has been decided. So all 650 seats in the House of Commons have been settled. But if you look at the numbers, the Labor Party picked up 211 seats. That's just, you need 326 to have a majority in the House of Commons. They've got almost 100 above that. So they're set. For the next 5 years, the Labor Party of Great Britain, will be running the government. God help the British people, because we'll get into some of that here in a minute. The Conservatives lost 251 seats. Liberal Democrats, they did fairly well. They picked up 63 seats. They only had 8 to start with. Now, all these numbers, the turnout around Great Britain was about just a touch under 60%. That was down about 7.5% from 2019. 2019 is when they last ran an election nationwide in Great Britain. So the turnout was down, but Labor picked up all these seats. Now, it's this next chart I want you to look at, the next part of this chart, that to me is the most fascinating to explain kind of what happened. Look at this. This dividing line is the amount of the share. Labor from 2019 till this year, look at this. They only picked up 1.6% more than they got in 2019. In 2019, they got, 32.2%? I mean, everybody's looking at this number of seats and they're like, oh my God, the Labor Party. Man, the British people must absolutely love them. Not so much. They only got 1.6% more than what they got in 2019. Look at the Conservatives, on the other hand. They lost almost 20% of their vote. They only got, as a grand total, 23.7%. If you take that 23.7 and you add in the 19.9 that they lost, hang on, let me do some fast math here. They got 43.5% of the vote in 2019. That almost got cut in half. Okay? Look at Reform, however. Total, they got 14.3%. They picked up almost 12.5%, which means that in 5 years ago, let me put that back up. 5 years ago, Reform Party got less than 2% nationwide. So to me, and this is how I'm interpreting it, so I could be dead wrong, but to me, you take that 19.9%, realistically speaking, the Conservative vote, 12.4% of this went to Reform, and another 7.5% of the British voters said, "A pox on your house, I will not vote for you." And you're going to see this in just some random examples that I'm going to show you here. Again, it's not so much that the Labor Party in Great Britain was just overwhelmingly loved by the British people. No, the Conservative people who would have voted for the Conservative Party, they either just didn't show up or they voted for Reform UK, Nigel Farage's group. Okay? And let me give you some examples of this. I mean, there's 650 seats. I'm just going to pick at random here. Let's just take it as an example. Okay, here's a district called Aldershot. All right? Pop this up here, make it a little bit bigger for you guys to see it. Yeah, here we go. Aldershot. This was a Labor Party gain from the Conservatives. Take a look at the numbers. Now, you look at this. Whoops. Here we go. You look at this and you say, wow, Labor picked up 18.5% more than they got in 2019. That's true. However, look at this. The Conservatives, they lost almost 28% of their vote. It's not so much now this is one of those rare exceptions. It's not so much that Labor did so much overwhelmingly better, as much as the people who would have voted for the Conservative Party, they just said, I'm not going to do it. Or, look down here. Reform UK didn't even field a candidate in this district back in 2019. Of the 27% that Conservatives lost, almost 17% of it went to the Reform UK. Just take another example here. All right, here's another one. Amber Valley. Okay. Another pickup from that Labor got by beating a Conservative. Watch this. Holy cow, this is even worse. See here? Labor, from 2019 to now, okay, they did fairly well. They gained 10%. Okay? They did 10% better than the last time. But look at the Conservatives. Holy cow. In this one district, they lost almost 40% from the last time they had a race here. And 28% of it went to Reform UK. I mean, like I said, it's not so much. Yeah, TBA, you got it. Conservatives lost over 50% of the vote in this county. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not the reason that the Labour Party of Great Britain is in power today, this July 6th, 2024, is not because the people of Great Britain overwhelmingly said, please, let us have a government that's controlled by the Labour Party and their ultra-leftist ideas about how to make Great Britain better. No, the voters of Great Britain looked at the Conservatives and said, a pox on your house. We don't want you anymore. You've never stood up for us. You betrayed us. Inflation is bad in this country. The economy's in the crapper. We're not able to enjoy a good standard of living. The National Health Service is a wreck. A pox on you. We're done. And in the meanwhile, they either didn't vote at all or they voted Reform UK. Now, that gets us to some a brief explanation. Now, who was the comment? Yeah, it was WWG1. Parliamentary system in Great Britain can be confusing to Americans. I absolutely agree with you. Believe me, I am no expert on British politics. I'm just trying to glean and what I can. But the boys from the Duran have a bit of an explanation for what's going on. Let's check out what they've got to say.
All right, Alexander, let's talk about the elections in the UK. You'll go through the results. I've got one question that I need to ask you, which is driving me crazy. And I imagine it's driving a lot of people crazy that do not understand the elections in the UK. How does Reform go from being the second, definitely the third most popular party, if you go by the polls, and even if you go by the votes, I believe, even if you go by the actual votes that they got, how did they go from being such a popular party, from having such a surge in support, to having the results show only, I think, 13 seats, if I'm not mistaken, while the Liberal Democrats had something like 65 or 71 seats? I mean, I don't understand how a party like Reform UK apparently is so popular, but the result is
the Patriot Power Generator 2000 is only 18 inches long, 13 inches wide.
Seems, at least to me, it seems low. 13 seats.
Okay, now Alex Cristofaro makes a fabulous point. Okay, real quick, let's go back to that chart from Sky News we were looking at. And the question that he asks is very fair, because I mean, look at the vote share. Okay, Liberal Democrats, Reform got more votes than Liberal Democrats, yet Liberal Democrats have 71 seats in Parliament, whereas Reform UK only has 5. That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. You would seem to say to yourself, well, hey, if they did a little bit better than Liberal Democrats, how come Reform doesn't have 71 seats in Parliament? Fair question. And by the way, I'm going to drop this link in both YouTube and Rumble chat. If any of you guys want to take a look at this and analyze it for yourself, what have you, I got to give compliments to Sky News here, because I tell you what, honestly, for somebody like, as I said, for a guy like me here in the United States that's trying to, watch this, understand it, etc., this lays out beautifully and simply what we're trying to understand everything. So let's go back to our boys from the Duran. Here is Alexander Macoris's answer.
Yeah, I think it's actually work. I think it's less than that. I think it's more like 4. And can I just say that is a massive achievement and a colossal breakthrough. And the most important thing to say is that Nigel Farage is now in the House of Commons. And that is the single biggest event and most important thing in some respects to happen in this election. Now, the thing to understand about a British general election is that it is an election that takes place on a first past the post system in 600 constituencies. So it's not one general election right across the country. It is 600 elections that take place simultaneously. And in each seat, if you win 49% of the vote and the other side wins 51, they win all the seats and you win none. That is the way the electoral system works. Now, the way that works out in practice is that it gives an incumbent MP enormous advantages because he or she's got their organization already in place. They have name recognition. They have the connections with all the local business people and all of those things. And it's very, very difficult for parties outside the electoral system to break through. What has happened in this election, and make absolutely no mistake about this, Reform UK has broken through. They've managed it. They've got into the House of Commons. Nigel Farage has got into the House of Commons. He's stood in many constituencies before. The system, the political system, basically combined against him in every one. So, the way it works is that in every, there's the two big parties, and to some extent, even the third party, the historic third party, the Liberals, will always send people, shuffle their votes around to the extent that they can to keep outsiders out. When it looks like they might break through. It's just, by the way, happened in Rochdale. You remember? Okay.
It gives a little bit better of an explanation. I dropped the link into chat because I want you guys, if you want to be able to watch this and get a really good explanation. TBA says, the vote reminds me of the post-World War II vote where the British threw out the Conservatives and voted nearly 80% for Labour, thus screwing themselves economically for the next 40 years until Thatcher. Good point. Labour Party promised fair shares for all, introduced extreme socialism to the British people, completely screwing themselves until Thatcher showed up. Very true. Now we do have a picture of the new Prime Minister of Great Britain, Keir Starmer. He's the head of the Labour Party. He is now installed as the Prime Minister. He's met with King Charles, and he is now officially Prime Minister because under the system, the election happens, the leader of the party that gets the most seats is invited to Buckingham Palace, and the King asks that individual to form a government. Well, the Labour Party wasted no time, and we have a picture here of Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister of Great Britain, as he heads for a meeting with his people down there at number 10. So check this out. Okay, let me assure you folks of something. Keir Starmer is not nearly that charismatic. As a matter of fact, he might be the most boring politician that's ever come through the British Isles in a long time. This man has the charisma of a petrified tree stump, according to all reports. Now, as far as what kind of cabinet he's put together, I've often said that the British Labour Party is the Democrats on steroids. Let me tell you something. Keir Starmer's cabinet does not fail to disappoint. Here's just some examples. Here's Rachel Reeves. She is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, basically our Treasury Secretary. That would be her title. Okay. Reeves says she wants to stick to current strict spending plans and has wooed the City of London, getting business leaders past and present to endorse Labour's economic plans. Yeah, buddy. Here's another one. The Foreign Secretary, or Secretary of State, would be our American equivalent. David Lammy, born to Guyanese parents in North London, raised by his mother. He became the first black Briton to study Masters in Law at Harvard. At 27, became Parliament's youngest MP, and when he was elected in 2000 before becoming a junior minister under Sir Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Oh boy, this bunch is just... Oh, here's the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Former barrister Shabana Mahmood confirmed as Secretary of State for Justice and Lord Chancellor, only the second woman after Liz Truss to hold the position. Former National Campaign Coordinator, she oversaw Labour's Batley and Spend by-election win in 2021, was credited of saving Sir Keir Starmer's leadership following the defeat. Oh boy, this bunch, I'm telling you. I have heard this about Starmer, but we're going to find out just how smart he is or isn't. Here's John Healey, the Defense Secretary. Oh yeah. This guy's a winner. In opposition, he argued for higher defense spending and criticized cuts to the size of the army. That's not bad. He also insisted, along with the new Foreign Secretary David Lammy, that the Labour government will have an ironclad commitment to continue supporting Ukraine. Boo! Boo! Oh, really? Starmer said this? Oh, that's great. Oh, God. We might have just as much fun with Starmer over in Great Britain as we're having with Biden right now in America. Oh, jeez. What a bunch. Well, we do have our first update of how things are going in Great Britain from one of my absolute favorite. Oh, Lammy. Lammy's the one that said this. Okay. My bad. I misunderstood you. We do have our first update from Great Britain about how things are going now that Labour has installed their government. And I have to give a big shout out from across the pond to the inestimable Katie Hopkins. She has our first update for how things are going. Do me a favor and check this out.
Breaking news here in batshit bonkers Britain, where we now have Labour in power, and Jess Phillips has already been in tears because when she was announced as the new candidate, she got heckled and booed by the Muslim mafia who were in the room. She asked for them to be removed. And you see, this is part of the problem. When you suck up to Hamas extremists, they will never accept you, no matter how much you pet the crocodile or try and, pleasure that group of men. They will will never accept you because you're a woman. So Jess Phillips, you reap what you sow. In other news, Reform. Nigel's done supremely well. Well done to everybody who backed him. Reform are now the third biggest party in government by votes. But of course, because our system is utterly bonkers, he ends up only with 5 seats. One of the first jobs of Reform, together with the Electoral Commission, should be to change the way our voting system is set up so that in actual fact every vote would count. And finally, Foreign Secretary has been announced as David Lammy. He's a guy who believes that men can grow a cervix if they try hard enough to say that they're a woman and tuck their cock into their spank. So looking really good so far for the Labour government. Well done to everyone who voted for them, you utter bunch of bastards. And that's it. That's your bonkers Britain. Breaking news here.
I love that woman. I love that woman. Yes. Katie from across the pond, darling. Love you. Oh, goodness. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Why did you bite me? I'm a snake. What did you expect me to do? Act against my nature? TBA says Blair and Brown both screwed the British. Starmer hired all of his friends as sycophants. Higher immigration into Britain to send more money to Ukraine. Wonderful sarcasm. They might want to get rid of their Dominion voting machines. Maybe they can get a fair election. And this statement on from WWG1 on Rumble, I agree. When the British swear, it sounds so classy. I absolutely agree with that. The British have an absolutely amazing way of swearing, and you sit there and go, that's so classy. And actually stop and think about it for a second. In America, we say the word bullshit. In Great Britain, they say bollocks. In the United States, we use the word fuck. In Great Britain, they use the word bugger. I love the way that the British swear. I absolutely love the way that the British swear. Jardom says, you should hear us say the C word. Jardom, what part of Great Britain are you in, my friend? I did not realize you were from across the pond. Oh, my word. Cool. Well, first of all, Jardom, welcome to the Electronic Front Porch. We're glad to have you. If you don't mind, and if you don't want to say it, that's perfectly fine. But what? South Wales? Oh, my goodness. Well, sir, you are welcome on this Electronic Front Porch anytime you want to come over here. And you know what? Please feel free to provide us updates and let us know how things are going in the British Isles. Now, I'm gonna say something here, and Jardom, you are completely at liberty to disagree with me. Everybody's asking the question, how is it that Reform UK gets more votes than Liberal Democrats, and yet they've got fewer seats? Part of that is geographic distribution, okay? And part of it is organization. Now, by geographic distribution, look at where the votes for Reform UK took place, but the other part of it is money and manpower. That's the big thing for the next 5 years that Nigel Farage and the boys and girls that are working in Reform UK have got to focus on. Can we build the infrastructure? Look, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, they have roots that go back centuries. Okay? They have the machinery built in. Now, they might get a little rusty every now and then, and it might get a little whatever, but they can crank it up when they need to. Okay? Reform UK has none of that. Like I said, 6 weeks ago, the Reform UK party was a theory on paper. Now they play, and I agree with this completely. He's playing for the long game. He's shooting for 29. If there's not an election that comes up sooner, and again, Jardom, you know British politics better than I do. You live there. You're living through it. You're whatever. You probably can speak to this way better than I can. But if I were Nigel and the gang, those kids need to be working in the anticipation that there's going to be an election sooner than 2029. Because this is just my theory of the case. Again, I'm completely wrong. Jardam, you're from Great Britain. Feel free to straighten me out if you need to. But I got a bad feeling. It's not going to take 5 years for the British people to get a belly full of the Labour Party and be like, that's it. We want another election and we don't want to wait the 5 years. Local elections. Okay. Council seats. Yes. Smart move. Build the infrastructure. Build the farm team. I mean, Jardam, if I may use an American analogy, we have the game of professional baseball here. Well, before you become part of a Major League Baseball team, you go through what we call the farm system. Single A, double A, triple A, and then you're a major leaguer. It sounds like a similar thing in Great Britain. Politically, your council seats. Small, definitely not MPs, but you're working your way up. You're building them. You're getting the infrastructure in place. The right is saying we need to go through. Brother, y'all are going to go through a patch. There ain't no doubt about that. You are going to go through a patch. And, you know, hey, from across the pond, and I'm not just trying to be hokey or be a showman when I say this, and I mean it. From across the pond, we're pulling for y'all. We really are. It doesn't matter to me if we're, doesn't matter if you're in the left or the right or whatever. You guys are citizens of one of the greatest nations on this earth. I mean, you are the mother country. So what you guys do over there is going to have ramifications around the world. So a tip of the hat to y'all as you go through this. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. And like I said, Jardam, anytime you want to come on this electronic front porch, be it on a Saturday morning or one of my regular live streams, we're glad to have you. So yeah, we've got Fedora Nation has made it over to South Wales, baby. Woo! Loving it. All right. Couple more things real quick. We're going to hop out of here. Now, we've been focusing on the British elections this morning, and let me do a real quick commercial before we move on. Doesn't matter if you're in South Wales. It doesn't matter if you're on the South Side. It doesn't matter if you're from the South Bronx. We say, cheers to you, mate. Absolutely. South Bronx, South Wales, South Side, doesn't matter. Fedora Nation is international. You are absolutely right, TBA. And if you're wondering what Fedora Nation is, it goes a little something like this. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm the man in the fedora. This is Front Porch Brunch. We get together on the weekends to talk about the news. We're on Rumble. We are on Twitter. We are on YouTube. We are talking about news. It doesn't matter if it's American news or British news or other news. And we're about to get to the other news here in a minute. As we all know that Britain is the continent and France is part of the island. Yes, Jardam, I'm sucking up to you on that comment. But we're going to talk about some French news here in a minute. So yes, if you're not a subscriber to my channel on Rumble and YouTube, please give me a sub. I am one subscriber away from having 900 on YouTube. I would love to keep Rumble growing, but yes, please subscribe to my channels. Please give me a thumbs up on this video today. I genuinely appreciate it. It would be very helpful, and I will thank you for a very long time. And Jardam, welcome to Fedora Nation, my brother. And if any of your brothers and sisters in Great Britain want to come on this electronic front porch, share the link with them. Tell them to come on. We'd love to have them. All right. The British had their elections on Thursday. Tomorrow, the French are revolting. Well, you could always make an argument the French are always revolting, but well, they're going through some transitions right now. Not those kind. They're going through some transitions right now, but yes, I will reach out to Brentley and let him know that the request has been made from across the pond to get this thing going again. I will definitely let them know. The French are revolting in more ways than one. No, seriously. They're having their elections this Sunday, and this is about to get real interesting. Before we get to the French, one last thing. I'm dropping an article in Rumble chat and in YouTube. This is from Time Magazine, talking about the impact of Nigel Farage and the Reform UK Party on this recent election. Read this at your leisure. But the French are getting ready to go. Now, what should we be looking for tomorrow? What should we be focusing on? Well, fair question. I give the Associated Press a lot of credit because they've got probably one of the best articles that I've seen that kind of breaks down the French election. So we're going to go through this. It's France's moment of truth. Here's how its snap elections work and what comes next. Article by Sylvie Corbett, we have the following. French voters face a decisive choice Sunday in the runoff of snap parliamentary elections that could produce the country's first far-right government. I hate that term. It's not far-right. But anyway, first far-right government since World War II's Nazi occupation, or no majority emerging at all. Marine Le Pen's anti-immigration nationalist party, National Rally, stands a chance of winning a legislative majority for the first time ever, but the outcome remains uncertain because of the complex voting system and tactical maneuvers by political parties. Voters across France and overseas territories will cast ballots for 501 of the 577 seats in the National Assembly, the lower and most important of France's two houses of parliament. The other 76 races were won outright in the first round of voting. The National Rally and its allies arrived ahead in round one with around one-third of the votes. A coalition of left, center, hard left, and green parties called the New Popular Front came in second position ahead of Emmanuel Macron's struggling centrist alliance. In the frantic week between the two rounds, hundreds of centrists and left-wing candidates pulled out of races to boost the chance their moderate rivals and try and keep National Rally candidates from winning. Final pre-election polls suggest that tactic might have diminished the far-right's chances of an absolute majority, but Marine Le Pen's party has wider and deeper support than ever before, and it's up to the voters to decide. And believe me, the results of this election are going to be something to see. Polling projections suggest that National Rally is likely to have the most seats in the next National Assembly, which would be a historic first. If it wins an outright majority of 289 seats, and that is the magic number, ladies and gentlemen, Macron would be expected to appoint National Rally President Jordan Bardella as France's first prime minister. New prime minister. Bardella could then form a government, and he and Macron would share power in a system called cohabitation. If the party doesn't win a majority, but still has a large number of seats, Macron could name Bardella anyway, though the National Rally might refuse out of fears that its government could be ejected with a no-confidence vote. Or Macron could choose a prime minister from the center-left and seek to build a coalition with moderates. If there is no party with a clear mandate to govern, Macron could name a government of experts unaffiliated with political parties. Such a government would likely deal mostly with day-to-day affairs of keeping France running. Complicating matters, any of those options would require parliamentary approval. If political talks take too long amid summer holidays and the July 26, August 11th Olympics in Paris, Macron's centrist government could keep a transitional government pending furthering decisions. How does cohabitation work? If an opposition force wins a majority, Macron would be forced to appoint a prime minister belonging to that new majority. In this cohabitation, the government would implement policies that diverge from the president's plans. France's modern republic has experienced 3 cohabitations, the last one under conservative President Jacques Chirac with socialist Prime Minister Lionel Jospin from 1997 to 2002. The Prime Minister is accountable to Parliament, leads the government, and introduces bills. The President is weakened at home during cohabitation, but still holds some powers over foreign policy, European affairs, and defense, and is in charge of negotiating and ratifying international treaties. The President is also the Commander-in-Chief of the country's armed forces and holds the nuclear codes. And that is the trick. If Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella get an outright majority in the French Parliament, yes, Macron may actually be in charge of foreign policy and national defense, but all the money flows through the National Assembly, much like here in the United States. And Macron's election doesn't come up till 2027, but But there are some people who are speculating he might not stick around if National Rally wins an out-and-out majority. Now, Macron's denying this, but then again, what incentive would he have? National Rally, Le Pen, and Bardella would basically cut him off at the knees as far as anything he wants to do, particularly as it relates to the question of Ukraine. So just keep that in mind, folks. All right, let's go back to this article. While not uncommon in other European countries, modern France has never experienced a parliament without a dominant party. Such a situation requires lawmakers to build consensus across parties to agree upon government positions and legislation. France's fractious politics and deep divisions over taxes, immigration, and Middle East policy make that especially challenging. That would likely derail Macron's promises to overhaul unemployment benefits or legalize life-ending procedures for the terminally ill, among other reforms. It could also make passing a budget more difficult. And why is the far right rising? While France has one of the world's biggest economies and is an important diplomatic and military power, many French voters are struggling with the inflation and low incomes and a sense they're being left behind by globalization. Does that sound familiar to any of us Americans? Hey, the things we're going through now, we as Americans, we feel them to be bad, and I agree with that. But the British, in their own form, are going through the same thing. The French are going through their own form of the same things. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how this vote turns out. Anyway, finish this paragraph. Le Pen's party, which blames immigration for many of France's problems, has tapped into voter frustration and built wide online support and a grassroots network, notably in small towns and farming communities that see the Paris political class as out of touch. Yeah, sounds very familiar. And how does European right look? See, to an American conservative, there are similarities, striking similarities, actually. Does a person who's on the political right in Europe is the same as a person on the American right? Not exactly the same. Again, similarities, some differences, but that's all dependent upon the issues. I mean, for example, in Great Britain, you guys address issues or touch on issues we don't even talk about here in America. And vice versa. So, like I say, I think there's a lot of similarity, maybe differences in the shades and hues of color, but not that undifferent, really. I mean, I think one of the things that's bringing American conservatives and European conservatives together is immigration, national identity, inflation, Ukraine. As I said, there's differences slightly in some cases, but there's a lot of similarities. So yeah, it's interesting. It's from an American perspective like mine, it's fascinating to watch what's going on in your country, Great Britain, and then, across the channel in France. So folks, buckle up. If you thought the British elections were interesting, get ready, because France may be in for one heck of an upending before it's all said and done. Okay. It is 12:30. Let's go ahead and bring it into a close. I'm going to have to save some of these stories for Monday night because I've got to get into them, but I've got something I have to go do this afternoon, so I got to bring this in for a landing. Folks, as always, it has been an absolute thrill to be with you for Front Porch Brunch. We are having all kinds of fun. We're learning all kinds of things. I'm learning all kinds of things. I hope you're enjoying these things as much as I am. I'm going to drop this AP story in chat. Let you guys have a look at it at your convenience. Thank you once again for being here on the Electronic Front Porch this weekend. We're going to be back Monday evening at 7:30 Eastern for Chatting on the Porch. And we'll be talking about the results of the French election. We'll be talking about how things are going here in America. The Sunday shows are going to be up and running, so we'll have some apologies to talk about that. I know, TBA. No HodgePodge, and I apologize for that, but unfortunately I have something I have to go do. Otherwise I'd be doing it. So we'll call it the news nightcap Monday night, but yeah, absolutely. We'll get to it. I promise. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for being here. You guys continue to have a great rest of your 4th of July weekend. We will be back Monday night at 7:30. Hit the thumbs up button, share the link around, subscribe to the channel. And as we depart, remember the words of that great American philosopher, Tom T. Hall, when he said, "It's faster horses, younger lovers, older whiskey, more money." Be it here in America or around the world. Let's hear it for Fedora Nation. You guys have a great weekend.